everyone, and welcome to Business Boutique. I'm Christy Wright, and today we are talking about inviting God into your business. I'm so excited about this because this is something I feel really, really passionate about. Now, I want to start by giving you a little bit of history of Business Boutique and some context specifically around the name. Now, about, let's say, 4 to 5 years ago, we had this dream. I had this dream, Dave Ramsey, the leadership board, we had this dream to help women with businesses, but we didn't know anything about this market and we didn't know what to call it or name it or how to brand it. And so we started really exploring what this could be. Well, at the time, there were a few main categories of how people described what we wanted to do. There was the side business title, the small business title. Both are accurate. We wanted to help women with side businesses and small businesses. Some people called it a side gig or a side hustle. Some people called it being a mompreneur. Some people called it a micro business. And there were a lot of different options of how to name this thing. And what we found in our research is that these titles or these labels are not interchangeable. So when we did a survey, actually, we gave them 4 specific titles. We gave them 6, but only 4 actually ranked. Side business, small business, home-based business, and hobby business, okay? So as we looked at the results, micro business and mompreneur didn't even rank. But of the other 4, it was exactly equal. 20% of the women identified with small business, 20% with side business, 20% with home-based business, and 20% with hobby business. And so we're like, how in the world are we going to name this thing? Because all of these women identify with different labels and different definitions of this thing that they're doing, and they don't cross over. So a woman that runs a small business, she's thinking, it's not just a hobby. Like, this is my full-time job. This is my small business. It's legitimate. Like, this is not just a hobby. But women that had a hobby business or home-based business thought, oh, I'm not a real small business. It's just this little Etsy shop. You've heard my rant about saying that. So we started to see, wow, there are different types of businesses represented in this market that we want to help and we believe that we can help. And there's different mindsets and different emotions and associations around all of these words. And so we really struggled. We tested different names. We sent out different surveys. We did social media ads and surveys and that type of thing. And what we found was there was not a specific name that really encompassed all of these women and what we wanted to do to help this market. We kept trying to describe them, who they were, and how we could help them. And Dave Ramsey, in all of these discussions and brainstorming, he just kind of caught on to the name boutique business. He goes, it's like a boutique business. Like it's like a small business, a side business. It's a boutique business. So he started calling it that. And I didn't know how to tell him. I didn't have the heart to tell him that we weren't going to name this boutique business. Because for most people, if you say boutique business, what do you think? You think we help you start boutiques, right? Like clothing and fashion or gift boutiques, not any type of business, which is what we were actually trying to do. But I didn't have a better suggestion and I didn't have a better solution. So I wasn't about to tell Dave Ramsey that we weren't going to name this boutique business because I didn't have a backup plan, right? So we just kept exploring and kept brainstorming, but y'all, we just kept running into this wall. What are we going to call it? What are we going to call this market of women that we want to help all the way from hobby business to small business and everywhere in between, every type of industry represented? What are we going to call it? And you know what I did? One day, after weeks of this, months of this, of surveys and researching and brainstorming and all of that, one day I decided to pray about it. I know this should have been my first line of defense, but like many of you, sometimes I come to that as a last resort, unfortunately. And so one day I was sitting in my bedroom and sitting in my bed and I just thought, Lord, what are we going to call this? We can't call it boutique business because we're not helping women start boutiques. We're helping them start a lot of things and grow a lot of things. And how do we describe this market when this market describes themselves in so many different ways? And I felt God say to me, flip it. It's not boutique business. It's the business boutique. And you're not describing what all of them do. You're describing who you are. You are the place that all women come to get help with business, any type of business. Y'all, I could feel it in the moment. That was it. I immediately sent a text to my leader and some guys on the creative team saying, guys, I feel like we're supposed to flip it. I think it's supposed to be the business boutique. We're not going to describe them because they're all over the map. We're going to describe ourselves, and we are the place that you come for all things business. And as soon as I texted that and every conversation after that, everyone got it. It was like this light bulb went off. That's it. Well, of course a light bulb went off because it was God's idea. It wasn't our idea. But what's so amazing is that's one example of the ways that I have invited God into this business and this brand and this dream. And you know what? God has a lot of really good ideas. Another example, I've told many of you this story from back in college where my senior year of college, I had an advertising campaigns class, and I'll make this story short for you guys, but I was in this group and we just struggled. We were the underdogs. We got C's on every project and assignment. And halfway through the semester, we're just really struggling. And we're competing to get this client, a fake client, for the entire semester's project. And so we were just struggling. We couldn't find anyone that liked this smart car 4.2 that we were charged with building a whole campaign around. Our research was terrible because no one liked it. We had nothing to run on. And so again, I came to my last resort, unfortunately, and I prayed about it. I thought, God, will you help us? All of the other groups seem to be doing great. They're getting A's, we're getting C's, we're smart, and we're trying really, really hard, but no one likes this car. How can we build a campaign around a product that no one likes? And y'all, that night I went to the library with my entire group, and we're all just doing research online, and I came across a petition to bring the Smart Car 4.2 to the United States. The Smart Car 4.2 wasn't in the United States at the time. And it was a petition of 500 names of people that love this car so much, they went online and signed a petition to bring it here to the US. This was our target market. It was gold. And you know what? We spent the rest of the semester keeping that a major, huge secret, by the way, from the other groups. But we built a whole campaign around this group of people. We called them, we researched them, we got in their heads, in their hearts, and understood why they loved this car so much. And then we were able to build a campaign that met them where they are. Why did that happen? Because God led me to that petition. Why? Because I prayed about it. And oh, by the way, our group was the group that won the entire campaign for the whole semester. I attribute all of that to that moment where God led me to that solution. So I'm going to tell you guys, I have been asking God for help in my business, in my career, in my work, since as far back as I can remember. Now, admittedly, sometimes I wait pretty late to ask God for help. Sometimes I have to run into 1,000 walls and bang my head against a wall and then finally realize, oh, I don't know. Why don't I pray about this? Why don't I ask God to help me with this thing when He's pretty good at helping with things? And so I don't know what you're dealing with in your business, but I want to spend a few minutes just encouraging you to ask God for help. Ask God for help with that thing. So often we think of our business life and our faith life as separate things, but they're not. They're not separate at all. I've noticed that we are faith-filled in some areas of our lives, but then we get so stinking practical about our business. Like as if God doesn't understand logistics, or God can't do math, or God doesn't understand marketing, or God doesn't have any new or creative ideas. Now, we realize how ridiculous that sounds when I say it out loud, but then we operate as if our business is completely separate from God. As if He doesn't have a part in it, He can't provide for it, He doesn't understand it, and He can't help us with it. By the way, the gifts that you use are the gifts that God gave you. And the way that you're using them are opportunities that God has provided for you, doors that God has opened for you. The business you own is actually God's business, and the impact you're making through your business is, by the way, the impact that God is using you through. Do you hear a pattern here? God, 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 God. God is already in your business because God is in you and you are in your business. So I just want to encourage you to not think about your business as a separate thing, but as this thing that you can invite God into and partner with Him on. A lot of times we think that our business problems are somehow outside the realm of what God cares about or what God can control, and it's not. A lot of times for me, I just have to get plugged in, whether it's to scripture or prayer or community to remind me of this. And so I want to give you guys a free resource. I have a 7-day devotional. It's totally free. It's just an encouragement to you. Because when you get plugged into Scripture, when you put your mind in the right area, thinking about God, focusing on God, asking God for help, praying to God, you'd be amazed at what things open up in your business, what challenges disappear, what solutions pop into your mind simply because you asked. Just like I sat down and asked God, how are we going to name this thing? Or I sat down and asked God for help on my advertising campaigns class. God wants to help you. You just have to ask. He has solutions and he has ideas that you can't even dream about. In fact, he loves to come through for you. He loves to come through for you in real life, in church, on Sunday, but also Monday through Saturday and in your business. Even something as practical as your business, he loves to show up. And he loves to show that he is God and you are not, which I don't know about you, but that is a struggle for me. I want to give you an example from John on the miraculous catch of fish, which many of you might be familiar with this story. But this is an example where Jesus appeared to his disciples after his death and resurrection, and he's appearing to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. Here's what happened. There's a few disciples there, and Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael, the sons of Zebedee, and two other disciples were together. Simon Peter said, I'm going out to fish. And they said, we'll go with you. So they went out and they got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Have you ever been there? You put some stuff out there and you didn't catch anything. You went fishing in your business and you didn't catch anything. You tried some marketing and you caught nothing. You put a lot of effort and energy into a project and you caught nothing. I've been there. I've felt that. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He'll show up in your business, but you may not even realize it's him standing there. He called out to them, friends, haven't you caught any fish? No, they answered. He said, throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. God provided, not just fish. God provided an answer and a solution to the problem they had. He provided a way when it seemed like there wasn't any way. He provided fish when it seemed like there weren't any fish. He provided an option when it seemed like all they had was an obstacle. He showed up and he provided because that's who he is. So I don't know what you're dealing with in your business. I don't know what roadblocks you're facing. I don't know what frustrations that you're dealing with, but I do want to encourage you to invite God in. Even if you don't pray much, I encourage you to try it. I encourage you just to ask God for help on that thing that you're struggling with, for help on that thing that you're frustrated by. Ask God to show up. Ask God to help you. You know, it'd be easy to think, oh, God doesn't care about the name of this little project we're starting, this new brand in Ramsey Solutions, but he does. And he did. And he showed up. And he named it. The business boutique was not my idea. It was not Dave Ramsey's idea. It was God's idea. You know, the fact that we won an advertising campaigns class and we had by far the best research, that was God's idea. That was God's solution. And sometimes I'd be willing to bet that God makes your situations or allows your situations to be difficult in your life or business so that you will trust him with the solution. And then when he shows up and he gives you that solution, he gets the glory. He's the one that made that happen. And I will tell that story of the advertising campaigns class or the way that Business Boutique was named. And I will never think for a second that I deserve credit for that because it was not my idea. It was his idea. So what are you dealing with? What are you struggling with? I want you to pray about it. I want you to ask God for help, and you will be amazed at how he comes through for you. And I'm praying right now, even for you, and I'll be praying for you in the coming weeks, that you pray about something and God shows up in a way that is more than you could ever ask or imagine, that he breaks out of whatever box you have put him in, because we all put him in a box, that he breaks out of that box and he shows up and blows your mind at how much he cares about you and your business and your dream and the things that he is doing through you. I want you to invite God into your business. I want to invite you to partner with him. I guarantee you he's already there because he is in you and you are in your business. It might just be time for you to realize it. All right, our next call is from Christina in Athens. Hey, Christina, how's it going?
Oh, hi, Christy. Thank you for taking my call.
Absolutely. How can I help?
I was calling. I've been writing devotions for the last several years, and I created a blog at the beginning of this year and then self-published a book through Amazon that was released right before Thanksgiving. See, Facebook has always been my main platform, first on my personal page, then on a business page that I created this summer. And besides posting my devotions, I've obviously been promoting and marketing my book this last month. And my question is, see, on my Facebook business page, Facebook is always suggesting that I boost my post. And I'm wondering if it is worth it, if it's worth the cost, and does it actually reach your target audience?
Yes. So this is a great question. If you know how to use Facebook advertising, then yes, it can work for you. It can be really, really effective. But there are a lot of variables at play, Christina, that have to be true for it to work. Meaning it has to target the right people, which means you need to know who those people are. It has to have the right messaging to make people pay attention and click and so on. And there's different ways to do it. Boosting is one way, but there are other ways to just do actual Facebook ads. And the algorithms are slightly different and the cost is slightly different. You can also change your goals based on, are your goals to get sales or are your goals to increase engagement or build your tribe, get more follows? So there's some nuances to this. I'll tell you, Christina, it's a lot more than I can answer in a quick call, but I would love to send you my course, Social Media Simplified, completely for free. It's a $200 course, and I do a deep dive on social media, and I specifically go into Facebook advertising and teach you step by step how to minimize the confusion and make it work for you. So if you will stay on the call, Kelly will get you that course. Again, that's Social Media Simplified. And then take that course, follow along, and that'll give you a lot more to work with to help you leverage Facebook for your business.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling. If you guys didn't know, we actually have a course specifically on social media for that very reason. Social media can be overwhelming, and y'all, the rules are always changing, but this is a great way to leverage your business. Your customers are there. They're on social media. It's free marketing. Now, you can pay for advertising, but the Social Media Simplified course teaches you how to use Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, and so on, even if you just want to do it the free version, where you're not paying for ads, how you can create great content that people want to share, that gets them interested, that gets them clicking and following and buying and signing up for your email list. And I'll give you a spoiler alert, it all comes down to great content. But what is content? What should you post? How often should you post? These are the type of questions that people have when they're getting their business started and trying to grow their business on social media. And that's why we created Social Media Simplified. If you're interested in signing up for Social Media Simplified, you can find that at businessboutique.com. Hey everyone, and welcome to Business Boutique. I'm Christy Wright, and today I've got some encouragement for you. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm the type of person where my mind just tends to run. Yeah, it just can take off like 100 miles an hour in a direction, and it may not even necessarily be the right direction or a direction that's even true at all, actually. If you came to our Business Boutique event in the fall, then you know I told a story about the power going out at my house and how I was convinced that there was a mass murderer outside that had cut the power, just like in the scary movies, and I proceeded to become terrified, creeping around my house with a butcher knife as a line of defense with candles lit everywhere, and that was pretty terrifying. Of course, you know, it was just the power went out because we had storms, something kind of normal. It didn't matter because the story I told myself was there was a killer. And that's one example of the many, 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 many stories I tell myself any given day. And what I've realized over the years is that all of those stories are not true. And I don't know about you, but I feel like in my life or even in my business and in my work, that's an area where the enemy can really get a foothold. Like, it starts so simple, doesn't it? Like, it starts with one mean comment on Facebook. It's one passive-aggressive comment from your aunt at a dinner, a family dinner, or a reunion. And that one comment, that one tiny seed, the enemy just waters, and it just flourishes. And it just starts to spiral, and your thoughts are gone. And it started out as, where's your baby's hat in this weather? And oh, by the way, then your mind's going, oh, I forgot the hat, and my baby's probably cold, and my baby's gonna get the flu. And then, oh my gosh, and what do the other mothers think of me? They're gonna think I'm a bad mom. And oh my gosh, I forgot the science fair project, and I didn't fold the laundry today. I'm so terrible, and you're bad at business and bad at life. The end. Right? Like, it just keeps compounding. And it all started with a tiny seed of an idea. But then what happens is our thoughts begin to shape our beliefs, and our beliefs begin to shape our behavior. You might have had one negative review on one product one time, and it started to shape thoughts in your mind. I'm not cut out for business. I'm not good at business. I can't do this. See, I knew I was never cut out for business in the first place, and I knew I wasn't business minded. I should have never started this silly idea in the first place. And the whole thing started from that one tiny negative review or comment. But that shaped your thoughts, and your thoughts shaped your beliefs, and you believe you can't do this. And that changes your actions, because then you're not going to try that hard. You're not going to go for it. You might even give up or close up shop. And it all started. It all can be traced back to this tiny seed of an idea. So you know what? I want to tell you what I do. I want to tell you what I do when I see my thoughts spiraling, which is on like a regular basis, okay? To help me keep my thoughts in check, I ask myself, is this true? Is this what God says about me? Is this really true about me? And what's so amazing is that immediately cuts through the lie. It cuts through the lie the enemy is feeding you, or the spiraling nature of your thoughts. And it brings you back to reality. No, I'm not a bad mom. No, I'm not bad at business. Yes, I can do this. You start to take all the emotions and the crazy spiral out of it and get back to the reality. Maybe I'm a beginner. Maybe I did have one negative review and I need to solve that or get better in this area. But it doesn't mean I can't do this. It doesn't mean I should close up shop, which is where those thoughts were heading. I want to encourage you to do something. I want you to make a list, okay? I don't care if it's 5 items long or 25 items long. I want you to make a list of everything you believe about your business. Now, don't edit this. Don't think, oh, the right answer is I can do it. So you write down I can do it, even though all day, every day you think I can't do it. Write down what you think all day. What do you think all day? Write those things down. I think I can't do it. I think people are better. I think the market's too saturated. I think that people aren't going to like me. They're going to reject me. Write down those beliefs and then hold them against that litmus test. Is this true about me? Is this what God says about me? Is this what His Word, the Bible, says about me? I guarantee you, more often than not, it's not true. Those are lies. Those are lies that you've been allowing to take up real estate in your mind. And I love how my friend Melissa says, your mind is multi-million-dollar real estate. So be very, very careful about what you let reside there. The Bible talks about this. It says, take every thought captive to Jesus Christ. So make your list. Check it twice, like Santa Claus, right? Make your list of your beliefs and then hold it against the test of what God says about you. And I can't wait to see how God is going to bust up that list and change your thoughts, change your beliefs, and as a result, change your actions. Hey everyone, and welcome to Business Boutique. I'm Christy Wright, and I'm so excited because today I get to share an awesome conversation with you that I had with my friend, Heather McFadden. Heather is the founder of Don't Mom Alone, and she's the host of the Don't Mom Alone podcast. And y'all, she is just such a light. I loved getting to sit down and talk to her, and I know that you're gonna love her too. Check this out. Heather, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. Such a pleasure.
Now, this is really fun. I love getting to connect to other women that are moms and chasing dreams and doing big things. And really, this whole thing started when I was on your podcast. And I was such a fan and just loved getting to know you. So I would love it if we could start by just telling our listeners about what you do, about your family, your business, your podcast, all the things.
Yeah, so my family, I have 4 boys, ages 6 to 13, and a husband, Bruce. He's the real entrepreneur. I'm more of a reluctant entrepreneur. And so it's funny to be on your show because I feel like a poser. But I stumbled into podcasting. I was a blogger for 3 years and thought I was going to write a book. That did not happen. And I'd already made space in my life to do that. So instead, I asked a couple of friends that I knew who already had podcasts. And this was 5 years ago. So literally 2 friends that had podcasts. And asked them to help me start mine, and I interviewed my mentor first, and then my mom, my dad, a couple authors I knew from the blogging world, and the rest is history. Just took off.
Okay, there's so many things I want to ask you, but let's start with 4 boys.
Yeah.
Heather, teach me all that you know. Like, I'm drowning with 2, and I'm not even kidding you. Like, they are crazy. Help me. Tell me all about what it's like to have 4 boys.
What ages are you? What are they?
2 and 3.5.
Girl.
I know.
It's just a different world than where I am right now. And everyone would tell me, you know, boys are harder when they're little and girls are harder when they're in their teen years. And I'm finding that to be true. My 13-year-old is a dream. Even 11, he's coming into his own. It's just, I don't know. We would say wait till 5. Like, I tell people, when 5 happens, they get a little bit more awareness that they're mortal and stop making really bad decisions. And those little years, though, I mean, that's really close together, 3.5 and 2.
Yes, that sure
Bless
is.
You.
Sure is.
You have to give yourself grace to realize that is really close together. And
oh my gosh.
The benefits will show later.
The little one is crazy, but I've decided I'm not going to say crazy anymore. I'm going to say future leader, because I've been doing some reading on strong-willed children, and that is my child by the book. Yeah. And he is opinionated and expressive and physically really strong. Like, he's really, really strong. So it just makes for very long, exhausting days. But at the same time, you're like, I love that spirit in him, you know? So it's just, it's a crazy season of toddlers and boys. And you're right, it's like, I feel like every day my number one objective is to keep them alive. Like, if I can just keep them alive, not just like food on the table. I mean, like, keep them from killing themselves, because they get into everything, but it really is a lot of fun. Now, I want to talk specifically even about how your journey of being a mom has influenced what you're doing today. And you, have this whole movement of Don't Mom Alone, your podcast. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about kind of the heartbeat behind even the phrase, Don't Mom Alone. Let's talk about that and why you started it.
So originally the show was God-Centered Mom, because a lot of my motherhood journey was being humbled by those 4 boys from the get-go. I was a 0 to 3 childhood specialist, speech-language pathologist, when I started having kids, and loved kids and thought, I'm going to be amazing at this. I mean, I have a master's degree in kids. And kids who have challenges. Like, I used to work with kids with autism and had cochlear implants. And so patience, I've got it. And I love crafts. Bring on the crafts. And they're gonna be amazing children because of me and my skills.
Sure.
And day 1 of being home, I'm in my closet crying. My entire in-laws and all my extended family are downstairs because we have this new baby to welcome home, and I am feeling completely incapable of even keeping him from crying, and feeling like, wow, okay, first realization, I need help from people, and I need help from God. And so I can't do this on my own. I remember that first night, up all night, every 2 hours, and I thought, is this the rest of my life?
Right.
This is how rest of my life? And I think it was my mother-in-law and my mom came in with breakfast on a tray and just weeping at how that small act meant so much, and that, with others' help and reaching out, it was going to be okay. And so with God-Centered Mom, it was this humbling of, okay, getting me out of the picture. I tried the whole child-centered approach. I'm going to do everything to make them this perfect trophy child, and that failing because of my second was like your second child, and he's a leader. He still is a leader, and very hard to manage as a 2-year-old, very persistent. Those badgering,
little leaders, they're hard to wrangle.
the just constant badgering, choices, jumping off very high places while I'm trying to feed and take care of other ones.
Sure.
And so just another realization, okay, this whole child-centered thing's not working out either. So then I was like, it's my time. Where's mom's time? I'm going to sleep in as late as I can. I'm going to get more girls' night outs. And that didn't fulfill me either, this more self-centered approach. And finally I was like, okay, God, what do you have to say about this? And so I sought that out. And that's where the podcast started. And then I started to realize a couple of things. One, a lot of my episodes were circling around 3 themes: mentorship, friendship, and discipleship. So reminding them that they need to have perspective, someone who's gone before them and done this and survived and can give them hope, and remind them of the value of this assignment. It's one of many assignments, especially if you work outside the home or, once your kids have launched, like, you're going to have lots of different assignments in your life, but this is an important one, but it's not essential. So to remember, like, to develop yourself. So mentors to do that, and then friends who can say, me too. Like, this is hard. I have a 2-year-old too who's a leader, and you're not a bad mom because this is a hard thing for you. And then discipleship, that the truth of the gospel is once we believe in Jesus, we're never alone. He has promised us a comforter and a helper to give us the skills and the insight we need for different kids at different times, because there's not a cookie cutter approach. There's not a recipe on how to raise kids, and they're his kids first, we're told. And so how do I steward this well? And I need God's insight. And so that was where I was like, okay, those 3 things, they all kind of echo don't mom alone.
Yeah.
And I had a listener. It's so great when people who consume what you're putting out start doing things and doing the work for you. She reached out to me and she said, okay, our small group is listening to your podcast and discussing it. And I've written these questions for each week. And I said, oh my goodness, it's like a book club, but with a podcast. So we launched the podcast clubs, and I started releasing discussion questions in like little 6-week curriculums. And we used the hashtag Don't Mom Alone, because it was a beautiful way, instead of just popping your earbuds and listening by yourself, that women could gather and have that real life community and mentorship, friendship, and discipleship in real life. And so when we were thinking about changing the name of the show, that one rose to the surface as something that resonated with a lot of people. We don't want to do this alone. For me, it was within 24 hours I realized I can't do this alone.
Right.
I'm capable. And so we get that, but then how, in an isolating world, how do we reach out? How do we find people?
I love that. You said so many things that I have questions about, Heather, because I just love your perspective. I love your spirit. I love your wisdom. And so many things you said, you just flew over like this was just a given. I was like, oh my gosh, that was so good. So I want to go back to a couple things you said. You said something in the way you described it as being a mother and being a parent as an assignment. And we will have lots of assignments. Let's camp here for a second, because as you probably remember, especially when you bring that baby home, even if you are a super independent woman, if you have lots of dreams, if you're very goal-oriented, if you have lots of ambitions, for some reason, when you bring that baby home, it changes you, but it's also very easy to lose yourself in motherhood, and it's very easy to find your soul identity there in motherhood. And I just love the way you step out of that in a little bit and go, hey, this is an assignment. It's a very important one. It's not the only one. You had assignments before children, you'll have assignments after children, and you'll have other assignments probably while you have children in your home. And that really is so much of the heartbeat of what I'm always trying to encourage women, whether they start a business or not, Heather, but to realize that their whole world doesn't have to revolve around their kids. They can have interest in volunteering and different things that bring them joy and fulfill them outside of parenting. But I think you just explained it in such a beautifully concise way of describing it as one of our many assignments. Talk to me a little bit about where that realization came for you kind of in your journey.
Well, the benefit of interviewing people for 5 years is you get little nuggets here and there.
There you go.
Input is one of my top 5 on Strength Finders. So I take these little things from here or there. And that one came from Kat Armstrong. She was on my show talking about motherhood, career, and identity. And it was something she was really passionate at the time, and it has just changed the way I see things. She differentiated calling versus assignment. She said, everyone's looking for their calling. Is this my calling? And there's a lot of strife and discontent and knowing, is motherhood my calling? Is this it?
Right.
And feeling shame if you're going through a season of infertility. Did I miss my calling? Is that the highest calling? And so she just said, if we're followers of Christ, we're all given the same calling to go and make disciples. So done. Check that off your list. You've got it. There's your calling.
Yeah.
And then the assignments are where that happens. And I know for me personally, that has been being a speech language pathologist and being a professor at a university for a little while and having a private practice and then having this podcast and having boys. And don't be jealous, but I was in a knitting group.
I am. Go on.
So jealous. For 5 years, apparently that's something, 5 years, with some older women in the church and some younger women too. And we would meet once a month and do our own little needlework project, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But I remember sitting in a group, this was before I had my first, and thinking, these women have had more years since their kids launched than they ever had kids at home.
Wow.
And I thought, man, okay, as I'm entering into this thing, which for me held a lot of value because I've always wanted to be a mom. I was the little girl who had like 7 Cabbage Patch Kids and took them everywhere. And that was part of my story, is I did want to be a mom. I did put a lot of emphasis on it, bringing a lot of identity, but to continue to remember that there are other gifts that God's given me too. I've always loved communication, and to develop those gifts and to seek those things out and to not make my kids the idol.
So. Yeah, that's really good. That so echoes some of the conversations I've had with Meg Meeker, and she's just brilliant. She talks about that. She said the healthiest relationships in a family dynamic, it doesn't really have to do with whether or not the mom works or doesn't work, outside the home, inside the home, side business, small business. It doesn't matter. And we put so much emphasis on that, on whether or not you work and how you work and is that okay and that type of thing. But it's about when a woman has interests outside of her children and how those things fill her up so she has more to give to her kids, to her family, and is more well-rounded and more balanced. And I don't mean life balance in terms of your time, but just how you feel in your spirit of feeling like, if you forget your child's uniform one day, you're not a massive failure. But at the same time, if they have a huge success, your every up and down doesn't revolve around a child, which we know there's lots of ups and downs around children. So I just love that perspective. And even the way you describe that, you have those women had more life when their kids had, after they had launched than they did in their home. And it really puts it into perspective. And those years, those formative years are so important. And when you're in them, I'll say this, especially from a mom of a toddler, it feels like time stands still. People are like, oh, it's the blink of an eye. I'm like, is it? Because right now I feel like it's slow motion. But in hindsight, it always feels like that. And so I think the perspective that you gain with each year of your life, with each year of parenting, if you have kids, it really can change you because you have a different perspective when you know more and you've had more life behind you. So I love the way that you describe that and describe that as one of our many assignments. I want to talk about something else you said, this idea of calling, because Heather, I've talked about this before. I think that it's kind of a buzzword in our culture, along with passion, and some people get intimidated by the word calling. I do. Like in terms of your profession or your business or your, how you spend your time and use your talents. And the idea of calling, that God put me on this earth for one type of profession. When their kids their youngest goes off to elementary school, that's when they start to lean into their dreams more because they're like, I wanted to be home for the season when they're home. And then when they're in school, I'm going to start a business or whatever. And their life flexes to adapt the season that they're in and what God's calling to them, calling them to in that season. So I'd love to hear from you on this idea of calling and especially with your experience. Like you've had a wide range of professional experience and podcast and business experience and mom experience. So how is that kind of evidenced in the seasons in your life?
God has me kind of in this place of unpacking a new definition of humility. Like I'd said before, I'd realized how prideful I was, and so to me, the answer to that was getting me out of the center and God in the center. So that's where God-centered mom came from. But then I realized, that's neglecting the gifts that God's given me. Like you were saying, the different skills that he's given me. And so I saw something, the guy that created the YouVersion app, he had tweeted out this definition of humility. And it's taken me on this whole journey that may end up in a book if I'm bold to follow God's leading. But it's humility is to fully occupy your God-given space. And to me, that answers the question of calling. If you, in humility, fully occupy your God-given space, for some of us, that might mean a shrinking to right-size our life to that space. We've kind of gone outside of our bounds and we're trying to be God for our kids, for our husband, for our friends, and we are forgetting who God is in the midst of it and what we actually can control. And sometimes for our moms, that can be a codependency. We've seen it in maybe our mom's generation, that they did forget their gifts and they made it all about their kids and they kind of went outside their God-given space to overcome and make their kids into something. And so then when they become adults and there's failures, they struggle.
Right.
For some of us, it's a swelling. There's a lot of women out there that aren't fully occupying the space they've been given, whether it's they are assigned to be home based on finances or based on what they're doing, and they need to fill that space and recognize that that is a gift from God, and that is what he has shown them and assigned them and called them to. And for some, it feels like a prison, what they are being given, that space. There was a year where my dad passed away. I ended up taking care of my mom while she went through chemo and surgery and radiation for breast cancer. And that felt like a prison. That did not feel like a God-given space in a good way. And I had to humbly occupy that and say no to some things and to fully embrace where I was. And God recently showed me, I was reading through Acts, and Paul was in a prison. And I was thinking, how did he respond? You know, he's literally chained to the ground. I'm thinking, that doesn't make going to the bathroom very easy. There's not a lot of freedom there. And he's praising God and praying. And he knows and he believes in a God who's outside that prison, who can literally shake the ground and make those walls fall in. But what I love is Paul didn't say, see you guys, I'm out of here, and get up immediately and run out. He stuck around. He saved the life of the jailer by saying, we're still here. He followed the jailer. The jailer professed faith. He followed him, went to his home, and his family believed in Jesus. And then finally, the authorities said, Paul, you're released, go in peace. And I feel like that's us choosing to realize that God-given space, those boundary lines. I think of the Israelites in the promised land and the boundary lines that God lays out in Joshua about, okay, here's the space I'm giving you. That those boundary lines for us can be our gifts and our interests and the time we are and the place we're in, and also our experiences. And sometimes our experiences are yucky. We might have abuse in our background or something really hard, and God's calling us to go and make disciples of women who've experienced similar abuse, and we have to be honest and open about that part of our story. And so that's what calling is to me, is kind of humbly accepting the space you've been given, and that might mean shrinking, it might mean swelling, and it may be a business, it may not be a business, but it removes the judging we do of others and the shoulding over ourselves, like I should do this or I shouldn't do this. It's you and God working through what is that space for me right now.
Yeah, I love that. I even love the visual of occupying that space, the way that you described that. And it lines up so well with what I've been kind of just working through in my own life and teaching some of the women in Business Boutique over the last year. I think there's a lot of talk about personality styles and, oh, I'm wired this way, and Enneagram and Myers-Briggs and DISC and all the things, StrengthsFinders, which is really fascinating to understand how we're wired. But to me, what I feel like I've been challenged on myself, but also challenging others on, just because you were created that way doesn't mean you get to stay that way. Meaning, if my strength is being outspoken, that's not a permission slip for me to just speak whatever is on my mind at all times. You know, that the areas that I find God stretching me is to grow in the areas that I'm weak. So I went through a season, when you talk about humility, I went through a season last fall. So this was the fall of 2017, where it was truly, like Oswald Chambers describes it, a valley of humiliation. Like it felt like at every turn I was being humiliated. Now I've gone through these before, and it's God humbling me. I've noticed a pattern here, Heather. But
I fully understand what you're talking about. So
yeah,
you're not alone in that.
That's right. There's been a couple of instances where in that season, in that valley of humiliation, where truly, Heather, I was wronged. Like I was wronged. It was not just my opinion. I was wronged. And I'm going, God, like, do you hear me? God, do you see me? What are you doing? And I felt God say, true story, Heather, I don't know if God talks to you this way. He talks to me this way. I felt God say to me, Christy, I know that you can speak up, but can you shut up? I know that you can fight, but can you sit down and take it? Can you turn the other cheek? And I thought, oh, that's hard. And what I really was sensing is, I know that I created you to be a fighter. I need you to learn how to be soft and be gentle and turn the other cheek. That's where you need work, because you're great at that. We don't need to work on that. You're really, really good at that. We need to work on the areas that you're weak. But then to your point, I love this idea of shrinking and swelling. Someone maybe that they're really good at being quiet. They're really good at biting their tongue and turning the cheek. Sometimes God's going to say, I need you to speak up. I need you to be brave. I need you to stand up. So even if we're created and wired very uniquely with certain strengths and that type of thing, doesn't mean that it's a permission slip to just, give up on the weaknesses and say, well, I'm not wired that way. That's not easy for me. It's not easy for me to be quiet and be humble. Well, too bad. God calls you to be quiet sometimes and be humble, and sometimes he calls you to speak up. I think it's, I can't remember who said this quote, But it's courage that it takes to stand up and speak up. It's courage that it takes to sit down and listen. I'm paraphrasing and messing it up, but it's something along those lines. And to know, have the discernment in the moment for what you need to do and what the situation is right for and where the areas in which you need to grow. I know that, Heather, you've talked to tons of women on your podcast and just in the last 5-year journey, and you even alluded to that a minute ago, some of the women you've talked to. What are some of the stories that you hear specifically from women that maybe are just struggling to do it all? You know, the magic phrase, how do we do it all? How do we balance it all those questions that people ask, even though we never really seem to come to a good answer on. What are some of the stories that you're seeing from women that you talk to and where they need help?
You know, I hear it most in emails I get or direct messages on social media is moms who either are getting the message that being a mom is not enough, and so they're struggling, especially millennials. That is a message they're getting that I felt like motherhood when I was young was hard. And now they have social media telling them not only do you need to keep these kids fed and loved, you need to enjoy it. You need to make it look amazing. Make sure you're capturing it well in pictures, and maybe have a non-for-profit on the side.
Right.
And so I think there's this pressure to be things that God never intended them to be. I love how you said you heard God tell you that you needed to quiet down. Like, could you shut up instead of
You're right.
And that to me is what I really feel passionate when I interact with moms, is for them to have a relationship with God, to hear for themselves and to have confidence in that, instead of looking for a formula, instead of looking around to see, like, you know, it's one thing to ask a friend, do you struggle with this in your marriage? Do you struggle with this with your kids, with identity? It's another to say, well, I should start a non-for-profit because my friend started one. I mean, that kind of idea. It's a calling to one-on-one relationship with God. So you're hearing His voice for you, and having confidence there, having the confidence in who He is asking you to be in that space, instead of feeling this insecurity and no peace. I don't feel like moms feel a lot of peace. There's not a lot of moms that feel like they're doing a great job. And so there's just constant failure messages that they're hearing as their head hits the pillow at the end of the day. Whether having kids has brought out some emotions that they're uncomfortable with. Never been an angry person. All of a sudden I'm screaming.
Right.
Never had a fear, and now my anxiety is keeping me awake at night. It's things that probably have been there the whole time. And because of motherhood, it's bringing emotions to the surface, and they're bigger and they're louder and they're red flags. And instead of stuffing them, I'm fine with medication, but medication and help is awesome. Let's not ignore them. They're there for a reason. Something's going on, and that's stuff that thankfully motherhood's brought to the surface, and you can deal with it then.
Yeah.
But those are some of the things that I hear the most.
Yeah, it's interesting, even as you describe women that have written in and feeling the pressure to do all the things. It makes me think of, I got a question in a coaching session recently in the academy. This was maybe, I don't know, like 4 months ago or so. And she said, I'm really struggling because I've got all these goals for my business and I'm trying to work on these things in my business, and I'm just having trouble doing it because I'm pregnant with twins and I'm just tired. So how can I get my business going? And I was like, stop. Just stop. Like, your body is creating 4 eyeballs right now. Like,
2 brains.
You need to rest. And I think, to your point, we put this pressure on ourselves to do all the things all the time. And you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And there will be seasons, and especially motherhood, nothing can slow you down like motherhood. Like pregnancy, your body will physically slow you down. You're more tired. You have less energy. When you have a new baby, you're way more tired. That will slow you down. Once your kids are moving around, nothing can derail your plans like children. So it forces you to realize you can't control the universe. Your plans may slow down, and there may be seasons. Like I said, maybe that dream gets delayed, but it's not denied. It's just going to happen when they go to school. You're not going to try to force yourself to do anything. You know, Heather, when I was talking with a mentor of mine, she has discipled me on and off since I was like in college. I know her through Young Life. She's a wonderful woman named Eve. And I remember talking to her. She's much older than me and has, kids that are grown. And I remember talking to her after I had Carter. And this was maybe like 8 months. He was like 8 months old. And she's like, how's it going? I was like, it's so hard. It's so hard. It's just so hard. And she said, well, you know why it's so hard? And I was like, why? She goes, because you're trying to do everything you did before. And it was like, for her, it was so matter of fact that you've added this insanely huge responsibility and blessing of a human being that you're responsible for caring for. And oh, by the way, your expectation of yourself is to still do everything you did before that child at the same level, with the same frequency, the same level of excellence. And when she said it that way, so practical, I was like, you're right. Like, I didn't say, oh, I'm having a baby, so now I'm going to cut back here and there and give myself grace. I just still had the same expectations on the cleanliness of my house and how frequently I would work out and the hours in which I would work. And that's not reality. And so I love even how you describe that of the expectations we put on ourselves when we're in the season of motherhood or whatever season that can so far outweigh what actual time and energy we really have. Heather, I could talk to you all day. I have to wrap up because I know that we could go long. I've got one more question for you before we wrap up, because I love to give our listeners and our viewers tactical takeaways. So let's talk about time management on a really practical level. How do you manage your calendar? Are there any apps or tools or resources? Are there things that you're like, I'm going to let that go because I can't do all the things? So what are some ways that you just kind of manage your life day to day that maybe could help us when we're managing all the things?
I am not a planner. I'm not going to use that as an excuse. I'm not strategic. I'm not deliberative. None of those things.
Okay.
I don't have to-do lists. I am very reactive and adaptable. So that works on some things. A lot of balls get dropped too. I'm a routine person. So when my kids were little, I was like floundering, and someone brought up Kat Lee's Hello Mornings, which I think you know Kat Lee. So I started implementing that in my life several years ago. Oh my goodness, almost 8 years ago, where I would get up a little bit earlier than my kids, which sounded insane at the time, but became so life-giving that I got upset if I missed it. And now that my kids are all leaving the house for the first time in 13 years, they all 4 leave the house in the morning with my husband to go to school, and I can have my quiet time then. And so my routine now is to get ready before they wake up, help them get out the door well, and then have my coffee and my music, my worship music blaring, and spend time with God to start my day, because it feels weird if I don't.
Yep.
And then to ask him to order it for me. Something that he's shown me recently in regards to hustle and networking is how often we think, oh, I'll say yes to this because then I'll get that opportunity. And he is such a better networker. And things happen that you could never orchestrate. With David, I was thinking of specifically in 1 Samuel, where Samuel shows up and David's the one who's picked out of all the brothers, and he's not hustling and trying to get in front of his brothers and say I'm the best. Like, they go down the line and it's David, and what is he doing? It's not like he's sitting on the couch. He's doing the things that God gave him in his space, which to be a shepherd. It's giving him the skills he needed to face Goliath. And then Saul, he hears through the grapevine, hey, this guy David, he plays the lyre, or he plays music really well. So again, he's working on his skills. He's not being lazy. He's still doing the things that God's given him to do, but the promotion came from God.
That's right.
And so it's again, doing the things right in front of you instead of trying to say yes to things that maybe aren't for you, thinking you'll manipulate the game to promote yourself.
I think that's really good. I think that's a really good takeaway, especially for women that are chasing business dreams and they feel like every opportunity they have to say yes to because it could open a door. And I love that. I love how Scripture says it's God that will lift you up and God that will bring you down if needed. And it's just such a great reminder, because when you feel slighted or looked over, if you are being faithful, if you're doing the hard work, that wasn't an accident. God's not in heaven wringing his hands going, oh my gosh, I totally forgot that Heather went to that event, because no, it's like he can open any door at any time and lift you up at any moment that he wants to. And he's probably doing something in you by closing that door before he's going to open the next one. So I love even that perspective of just the permission for us to take our sticky fingers off the steering wheel of every dang detail in our lives that we want to control and manipulate, which is certainly a struggle for me, and I know many women that I work with, so that's really, really helpful. Heather, I love talking to you. I love your heart. I love your wisdom. Just even the Spirit and light in you is just so evident as you just talk about Scripture and you talk about how God is moving in your life. So thanks so much for sharing with us. I'd love it as we wrap up if you would tell our listeners and viewers where they can connect with you, listen to your podcast, and keep up with what you're working on.
Well, it's Don't Mom Alone, everything. Don'tMomAlone.com, on Instagram, on Facebook, and it's on iTunes and Spotify, and anywhere where you find podcasts, you can find the show.
Well, you are so encouraging, and I know you're crazy busy, especially with your 4 boys and all the things, so thanks so much for taking some time to hang out with us.
Oh, I appreciate you inviting me.
We've got a call from Jenna. Jenna's in Phoenix. Hey, Jenna, how's it going?
Hi, good. How are you doing, Christy?
Great. What's going on? How can I help?
Well, we just started a business where really it started, I wanted to write a blog about our lifestyle. We started side hustles that became full-time businesses in eBay and vacation rentals on Airbnb, and it allowed us a lot of freedom and flexibility, and it's kind of a unique lifestyle so we could be stay-at-home parents for our kids. So I wanted to blog about that, but then we decided to add online courses to actually teach people how to sell thrift store clothing on eBay or do vacation rental hosting. But they seem like 2 different things, so I've kind of struggled with my social media marketing. Like the name of the business is Self-Built Life, and it's more about our mission statement of wanting to give more freedom and flexibility to people who want to build their side hustle into like a lifestyle business. But whenever I post on social media, the more specific tips and education in the 2 different areas, it seems like we lose part of our audience because maybe they're just expecting stuff on vacation rental hosting or just on reselling thrift, and they seem like 2 different things. So I don't know if I need to be more general about my marketing or just keep going for that ideal customer that wants to do both.
So let me ask you this. Is that true? Do you really have an ideal customer that wants to do both? Because it's possible, Jenna, that you're this anomaly, that you're doing 2 very different things, but you might have a customer that really gravitates towards the eBay thing, and then you have a completely different ideal customer that gravitates towards the Airbnb vacation rental thing. Now, of course, the motivation of why they pursue those is the same. So their motivation or their why of, I want flexibility to be home and have a lifestyle business, that type of thing. That the why is the same, but the businesses are very, very different. The startup is very different from thrift store to Airbnb. So I'm curious, have you broken that out and considered the possibility that you have 2 ideal customers that are completely different, that have different needs and want different content? Have you broken that out, or are you convinced that your ideal customer wants to do both?
No, I think it is 2 separate ones because one person is not going to do both. So really, it's because it's a husband and wife team. Like I'm doing the vacation rental, my husband's doing the reselling thrift. So it's not going to be 2-person or 1 person trying to do the same thing. So it's like we should keep them. I think they're 2 ideal.
Okay.
2 ideal customers.
Okay, I agree 100%. I'm glad you've sensed that because this is your business. I don't want to tell you what your business is, but I would say that the market of people that want to do both is very, very small, whereas you could have a much wider market of 2 separate markets that want to do the thrift store and want to do the vacation rental. So here's what this means. I don't normally recommend you do 2 businesses, but because you've already done 2 businesses, what's great is if you want to continue to teach these 2 concepts to 2 different markets, you can. What I want you to do is I want you to think of there being 2 sides to your business. There's the customer-facing side, and there's the internal side. The internal side, meaning you, your husband, your team, whoever's working on this business, the courses, all that, I want you to find as many efficiencies as possible. So if you create a course, I want you to pick one platform that you can create multiple courses on. You're not going to reinvent the wheel every time you do something for either of these businesses. So find all the ways that you possibly can to streamline and find efficiencies behind the scenes internally. However, the customer-facing side of your business, it's as if there's 2 completely separate businesses, which means you have 2 personas, 2 ideal customers. You've got 2 different Instagram accounts, 2 different brands, 2 different messages. Everything is separate. Now, I know this sounds crazy, but actually you can do it because you've already done it. And so you're just going to take the knowledge and separate it. You're no longer cross-pollinating here of like thrift store or Airbnb or pillows or eBay. That's confusing. You're confusing your customers. So I want you to separate and have very clear messages for each of those target markets. But again, behind the scenes, it doesn't mean you have to reinvent the wheel every single time. Let's say you pick one course platform, you create a course for Airbnb and you create a course for thrift store on that same platform. You could even come up with a similar outline structure and you just plug in different content, different steps, different tips. So that's going to make it easier on you and more efficient for you, for your productivity, for your output, your production. But on the customer side, it's going to be so much more clear. And I think when you have those clear messages for those specific people, it's like bait when you go fishing. You put out a certain type of bait, you catch a certain type of fish. So when you start putting out those messages, you will attract people that are interested in that thing to those specific social media. So you're going to have to do a little untangling for a minute, but you can do it. But I think the rewards that you will experience will be well worth the work that you put in separating it. And then I think you'll see those businesses thrive. And even if it's something where, to your point, your husband kind of runs with one and you run with the other, cool. Great. That'll just increase your productivity and focus because you're going to kind of own this one and he's going to own that one and y'all come back together to share efficiencies. But on the customer side, you're growing it as if they're completely separate things. No one would know that the eBay person is the Airbnb person, the same owner. You know what I'm saying?
We could say like the name Self-Built Life for resale, Self-Built Life for vacation hosting, like be two separate, but still keep the same main name because we'll have one platform of Self-Built Life as our name, and then two different social media. Yeah,
two different social media. I would even have, but I wouldn't have them go to the same place. So if your call to action is to go to a website, if I'm interested in Airbnb, I don't want to land on a website talking about thrift stores because I'm confused now. I thought I was interested in Airbnb. I need to land, but you maybe have one website platform and you just do different designs for the two places. You see what I'm saying? Like it can be subtle tweaks on your end, but to the customer, the design, the name, the experience is completely unique. You just don't want to cross-pollinate their experience because they're going to get confused if they're interested in Airbnb, why they're learning about eBay. And so your job is then to separate and untangle. Jenna, I don't know, have you read the Business Boutique book?
Yes, I have. And I would take my homework and doing the first two tiers and mission statement and why and everything.
That's perfect. So when you're going through that, go through it. I know it's going to feel like double the work, but it's not. Go through it as if you're creating two separate businesses. So fill out your plan for each of them separately, and they will begin to, in your mind, have their own unique identity. And that's really helpful for you because it's going to help you separate and think about them differently and create them differently. You may manage them the same. You may put the same amount of work and, like I said, the same website platforms, the same scheduling software through your email, all that behind the scenes. But for the customer, it's going to help you think of them uniquely because they are unique. They're different and they need to be marketed to differently and really separate those messages. It's a great question. I love that you've done this and now you're teaching others to do what you've done, which is a great way to build a business. And I wish you all the best. Great question. Thanks for calling in. You know, I love that she asked this because so many people do that. Their business starts as one thing and then it evolves. They're like, they start to get questions. Well, how did you build this business? Well, how did you start a subscription box service? You know, my friend Jessica Principe of the All Girl Shave Club did this. She started a subscription box shaving business. And then through her success has had so many people asking her how she built a subscription box business. And so now she's starting to dabble in this. And what does it look like to help people with subscription box services? How can I teach people to do what I've done? It's a really common evolution in your business where you begin to charge not just for the products you sell, but the knowledge you have. So maybe you have a skill, you teach piano, but then over time, you're charging for the skills of teaching piano, but over time people are saying, hey, how did you build this business of a service-based business? And you're teaching for your knowledge of the piano tutoring industry, the piano lesson industry. So when you're beginning to think about how you can grow, it's a great way to think about how you can grow. How can you price and charge, not just for what you do, but for what you know? Great news. A lot of times you can charge more for that, and it's less work and less effort. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you want to download your free 7-day devotional, you can do that by clicking the link below.